All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be breaking down the top prop bets for this London game between the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets. Let's go in and get into it. So it is worth calling out that this game total is somewhat lower, 43.5 total points. And also when we look at the point spread as well, the Jets are going to be 7-point dogs in this game as well. So we might have some game script prop bets that we can go ahead and make, but also both defenses have two pretty stud cornerbacks that have basically shut down the receiver number ones for each team. And so for the Jets, obviously Garrett Wilson could struggle. And then for the Broncos, Courtland Sutton could potentially struggle as well. And so we could be looking at the number 2 pass catchers for each team. And so if we're just kind of assuming that Garrett Wilson is going to struggle somewhat, we need to look at the number 2 pass catcher, which has actually kind of been Mason Taylor for the last 2 games now for the New York Jets. My biggest worry with him in the last game was whether or not Justin Fields would get in the football, because he kind of broke out under Tyrod Taylor. And we actually saw him have an even better game last week as well. And so I'm kind of looking at some prop bets that we can get to for Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor ended up with 12 targets. Garrett Wilson ended up with 10 targets last week. And so I do think Mason Taylor has a good chance to end up having a good game. Last week, guys, ended up 9 catches for 67 receiving yards. And we can see his game log over the last 3 games has at least been able to get to 4 receptions. So if you want to bet him to get over 3.5 receptions, I think that ends up being a pretty solid route to go. And so if we just look at kind of some of the other books out there, a lot of them are giving him 3.5 receptions. I would be comfortable betting on that over. The only issue is really the Denver Broncos defense has, again, been pretty darn stout just in general, and especially against tight ends. They've only given up 20 receptions thus far this season to opposing tight ends. So basically right at that average, or right at that line there for Mason Taylor to get to 4 receptions. So don't necessarily love that, but it's one game slate. We're going to have to find some bets that we could potentially force. Now, jumping on into another tight end, it's going to be Evan Ingram for the Denver Broncos. Now, the biggest issue with Evan Ingram is he's really not playing a lot of snaps, okay? He's only getting like 41% of the snaps last week, so we don't like that. Had a 54% route share, so that's a little bit better for him as well. But we are gaining him at about 3.5 or 2.5 receptions, and obviously, I like either of those bets that we can get him at. Or I could even see betting on him to get over 3.5 receptions, which he's been able to do the last 2 games since he's been back from injury. The Jets have been a team that have really done a good job. Let me rephrase that. The Jets have been a team that have allowed kind of the number 2 pass catcher for a team to really do well. And that could end up being Evan Ingram in this game. Maybe it's Troy Franklin. Maybe it's Pat Bryant. Maybe it's Marvin Mims. We never really know with Sean Payton. Kind of my golden rule over the past year and a half has been trust Courtland Sutton, trust his role, and then everyone else is a guessing game. J.K. Dobbins at running back, R.J. Harvey. Like, we don't know. We don't know how Sean Payton's going to choose to attack a defense. He does see things differently. It's not always just based off of, oh, this is a good matchup or not. Sometimes it's just based off of who he can get into a certain spot. But the Jets are about the middle of the road in terms of receptions given up to opposing tight ends. And I do expect Evan Ingram to at least hold the road that he's had over the last few games. And so for him to get over 2.5 receptions, 3.5 receptions, either of those, I think that ends up being a pretty solid bet for him. Now, if it doesn't end up being Evan Ingram, I do think it would end up being Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin has consistently gotten the second most snaps for the opposing receivers there for the Denver Broncos. I don't want to say we can trust that again. Sean Payton, you don't want to say trust unless it's Courtland Sutton, but he has consistently gotten the second most snaps, 68% of the snaps. So I think we can trust that at least for one game sample here. And he ends up being someone that I think we can look at a decent amount. So last week, guys, only 3 receptions. The week before that, 4 receptions. The week before that, 2, and then 8, and then 4. Okay, targets have been there, though. One game where he had 4. Last week, he ended up with 5. This matchup is kind of like last week's matchup going against the Eagles. And so I don't think I would want to go with both Evan Ingram and Troy Franklin, although they are pretty low. I could see on a one-game slate kind of making that work. And if you guys want to get there as well, again, not a terrible bet there for Troy Franklin. Now, that being said, guys, again, I do kind of expect it to be a tougher game for someone like Courtland Sutton, but at the same time, for him to get over 4.5 receptions, that just seems too low. Like, he could easily end up at 5 receptions while, still having a tougher matchup. But Sean Payton has done a good job of getting him involved in the game plan basically every single game since Bo Nix has taken over for the starter of this team after the bye week. We got to make that distinction from last season, okay? And so since that bye week, Courtland Sutton has just been a stud, a certified stud. One bad week in there against Indy where Troy Franklin ended up going off, which again, something like that can always happen. I actually think this ends up being an okay bet for us to get to 4.5 receptions there for Courtland Sutton, simply because he's too talented and that line is too low. Now, it is worth calling out that, his under is the favorite here, 51% for the under to hit. So not necessarily a bet that I typically like to recommend for PrizePicks or Underdog. And then I want to go ahead and jump into J.K. Dobbins because he does seem to be the running back number one for the Broncos. Again, we can't trust it, okay? But I will say if his role actually just stays about the same, like last week, guys, he ended up getting 51% of the snaps. If we can at least get that, and I do think we will. We saw last week, guys, R.J. Harvey took kind of the back seat where Tyler Batty ended up getting more work than him, which was a little bit strange. And J.K. Dobbins throughout the season has basically gotten, around 52% of the snaps. Had 1 week where he saw 67. That was against the Chargers. But if we can at least bank on 50% of the snaps, and a game in which there are 7-point favorites in this game, then I actually like him to get over his 15 rush attempts here. We could get at 14.5. Obviously, we would want to make that bet there, but not terrible here. Again, 7-point favorites. We saw kind of what they did against Philly last week. Cincinnati, he was able to get 16 rush attempts in that game there as well. Titans, kind of a similar matchup. So 3 of the 4 games in which you would kind of expect him to be able to get over 14.5, 15 rush attempts, he's been able to do that. And so I think this ends up being a decent bet. A lot of people are just chasing his over rush yards. I don't know if I would like that bet actually, guys. People are just simply betting on that because of the last 4 games. The Jets are not terrible against the run, but they're also not great. So that's part of it as well. I get that. But guys, the Jets rank 4th in terms of rush attempts given up. And that's with including the Eagles who played on Thursday Night Football. So really 3rd. And so to me, that ends up being a much more appealing bet there. J.K. Dobbins over 15 rush attempts. If you want to bet on J.K. Dobbins to get over an anytime touchdown as well, that bet does have a 52% likelihood, so not terrible there as well. Now, when we go ahead and zoom out, we are seeing like Marvin Mims Jr. to get under 6.5 for his fantasy score is a plus EV bet here on PrizePicks. This is the PrizePicks cheat sheet I'm showing you guys right now. Don't mind that. Again, don't know the snaps. Last week, he did not get that many snaps. Maybe Sean Payton sees weakness that he can exploit with Marvin Mims. Same thing with R.J. Harvey, guys. Again, he did not get that many snaps last week. Who's to say that doesn't change this week? But also, I don't mind getting action on these. These 3 bets actually make a decent amount of sense, but also not exactly bets that I feel like we need to go out of our way to target. Last week, one of my favorite bets was Breece Hall to get over his receptions just because we kind of knew that he'd be in for a higher workload with Braylon Allen being out. We actually did see Isaiah Davis ended up getting 44% of the snaps, so he basically fell into that Braylon Allen role. So like Breece Hall's playing time wasn't really any different. 60% of snaps, we like that. He had a 43% route share. He actually ended up with 14 of the 15 running back carries, so that's nice for him. What I want to concentrate on is the receiving. I do like his over receiving yards of 27.5. As we can see, he's been able to do that basically every single game except for one against Buffalo. This is also a decent matchup here going against the Denver Broncos, who rank out 5th in the league in terms of receiving yards given up to opposing teams' running backs, averaging about 49.4 receiving yards to opposing running backs. So Breece Hall right there, not a terrible bet. And then that being said, like Isaiah Davis, guys, if he's going to end up getting the same work that he got last week as well, which is about 44% of the snaps, 41% route share, he ended up with 4 targets for 3 catches for 28 yards. Like that wasn't a fluke, okay? Dallas was poor against the pass. That's how you, or with the running back, that's how you attack them. That's going to be the exact same for the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos are actually pretty decent at stopping the pass in general with the receiver and tight end. So you really are going to try to exploit this with the running back. So those 2 bets I like. I actually like Davis a little bit more, although maybe Braylon Allen gets 65% of the snaps randomly, or 70% of the snaps. I don't see that happening. I still think they're going to keep this split, the 60-40 split. And if that happens, then Davis to get over 9.5 receiving yards becomes better. It's just always a little weary to bet on a backup that you don't know for sure what the playing time is going to be. And then it is worth calling out, guys, the passing yard profits that we are getting, to me, do feel to be a little bit too high, just because, again, they are favorites. This would correlate with J.K. Dobbins for over his rush attempts, seemingly there, if you guys like that bet. I don't think we need to bet that. I think that'd be forcing it. Justin Fields with his passing yards as well. I wouldn't bet the over. It seems like a lot of people are betting the over just based off of kind of what he's been able to do 3 out of the last 4 games. He has just been so streaky, where Pittsburgh was a full game where he played really well. Buffalo played terrible for the full game, ended up getting injured. Miami played pretty bad for most of the game, played well for most of the first half, played a really good second half. And then Dallas kind of the same stuff where, majority of the game didn't play well and then kind of played better at the end. Denver's a much better defense. I kind of think the under would actually be the way to go. I get why people are betting on that though. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day, guys. I'm going to give you guys 2 bet slips here. The first one on underdog is the one where these are the bets that I like the most for this game. Again, some of them were being told to bet the under, like J.K. Dobbins. We're taking a little bit of an increased payout here because I would rather bet him at 14.5 rush attempts. These are a little bit of a decreased payout because they're highly likely to hit. And then Isaiah Davis, again, I think that ends up being a pretty solid bet. Now I'm going to show you guys the PrizePicks slip here. This is what the data is telling us to bet on. I don't typically like betting on some of these because they are smaller lines. But I will say the data is typically more right than me, obviously, right? That's why we make the decisions based off of the data. But that's why I like to go through and kind of break down kind of my thoughts for it as well. So again, like with Mims and Harvey, yes, if they get the same playing time that they had last week, sure, they'll hit their unders most likely. They could always pop one big play, especially like both of them. That's kind of what they're known for. Courtland Sutton, I do feel like he's safe. Again, I like him a little bit more for his over 4.5 receptions. And if you guys want to use that there on the underdog bet slip, by all means do that. I'm actually, let's just do that. That'll be included on the underdog bet slip, 4.5 receptions over Courtland Sutton. So in a weird way, we're kind of hedging here. And then Josh Reynolds just really has not been involved all that much. His snaps last week were there, like 73% of the snaps actually ended up getting 6 DFS points last week, guys, but I just don't feel like we can necessarily trust that. And again, the data likes this as the 4th best prop bet that we're getting on this slate. Now that's going to do it for this video. Appreciate you guys being here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Did this video pretty late here, guys, so I want to get out to you guys, though, for the London game. So, yeah, show some love, like the video. If you guys would like any access to the 9to5 tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. We have PrizePicks tools, NFL DFS tools, and fantasy golf tools, all available for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Thank you for watching. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.